Chapter 21. I was camouflaged as I looked up to the peak of the huge orange monolith that was Soliel's castle. I was planning on diving into this dungeon multiple times today, knowing that this orange hue will quickly change to blue and cause some unwanted attention to shift over here, but I wasn't worried too much currently. My strength could be considered great, and I didn't see another case like Anderson crazily appearing to bring me any issues. I stopped thinking so much and looked forward to seeing how long I would clear this dungeon that took an elite hunter squad of the city more than half a day to go through. A dungeon with one floor holding a huge castle that had 20 extremely large rooms and one boss hall. I was looking forward to it. I placed my hand on one of the squares of the monolith with bubbling enthusiasm as I was transferred to the plains that showed a castle on the horizon. All the active skills were activated, making my body shine with an inordinate amount of colors. I also activated Whirlwind as gales of wind also began appearing around me, making me disappear from the spot I was standing just as I put some force on my feet. Haha. I was propelled upwards for more than 10 meters as my figure breezed towards the castle. I couldn't help but let a laugh escape my lips as I fell towards the ground and rebounded, only to be thrown forward even faster. I had to adapt to this crazy level of strength and speed that the skills and my increased attributes were giving me as I moved forward. I couldn't control my descent from my last jump and managed to smash into the huge door of the castle, disrupting its serene peace and waking up the first 10 statues in the first room. I dashed towards them as if I was possessed and finally cast Smite. 10 golden swords of light appeared above me even faster than when I cast it the first time, hanging imposingly as they waited for my command to strike down. I couldn't help myself as I said these words out loud, and the 2-meter-long golden sword barreled down towards the oncoming statues. Boom. A blinding light exploded out as the golden sword struck down the incoming statues, causing dust and rubble to fly about as I breathed heavily and watched the scene clear. Only stones were left shattered on the ground. Haha, haha. I couldn't help but laugh at the ridiculousness of it. In less than a second, all the rank C monsters were dead. I was even more confident while thinking about all the skills that enhanced my damage, cast, and attack speed, as well as increased penetration that let me further ignore the defenses of monsters. I felt the rush and adrenaline coursing through me as the room was completed in under a minute and pushed off from where I stood to head towards the large door to the next room. I blasted in and saw the now 11 statues move about as another 10 golden blades appeared above me. They targeted the nearest 10 as I moved at high speeds and quickly appeared in front of the 11th, moving my hand around speedily as I plastered multiple explosive runes on its body and commanded them to explode right in front of me. I loved watching the huge explosions occur when I was near and observed the huge impact blasting out the statue's body. The entire force was negated by the now 100 proficiency skill Arcanist's sphere of protection that wasn't really a sphere anymore and hugged my body as if it was another layer of skin. The room was once again cleared in a few seconds. My breathing increased and I rushed into the third room. 10 statues were quickly obliterated by another cast of Smite, and I moved close to the remaining 2 statues and cast Flames of Torment. The long pillar of flames had a darker color. After reaching 100, its flames coagulated together tightly as if they were a thick viscous material. It was rotating the moment I cast it in its long linear form, causing hot suffocating winds to fly out. I threw the thick cable of flames forward and they literally melted the statues the moment they came in contact. I stopped for a second to catch my breath as I just cleared 3 rooms out the 20 in under 5 minutes. A childish smile wouldn't leave my face as I continued on forward to the 4th. The next rooms were cleared in a similar fashion, starting out with Smite and following with either Explosive Rune or Flames of Torment. Starting from the 10th room, I just cast another Smite the moment the first 10 statues were shattered by the first cast, finishing them in record time. I was now standing in front of the huge door that led to the boss room, and I tried collecting myself as I impatiently went in. The Titan was as humongous as usual, frighteningly boasting its 10-meter size. The 10 guards standing by its side couldn't even respond, as 10 golden swords smashed into them the moment I entered. The huge beast opened its blank eyes the moment the guards were destroyed and began coming towards me, its huge steps causing the ground tremble. I watched the boss menacingly come towards me as 10 swords of light appear, then another 10, and another 10 as Smite was repeatedly cast 3 times. I commanded the first 10 to shoot towards the boss in a tight-knit circular formation. They smashed onto his chest, stopping his advance and pushing him back. The next 10 flew up one after another to repeatedly strike the same area. I was focusing on the Titan's head, blasting onto him and pushing him back even further. The last 10 flew in and surrounded the neck around a few meters away and rushed forward while it was still disoriented before it could even roar or do anything else. The 10 golden swords closed in on its neck from all directions, saying. The Titan wobbled for a few seconds before a pillar of thick flames wrapped around the nearly destroyed neck and squeezed in, melting everything it came in contact with. Another second passed before a loud crash was heard in the huge hall. The Titan's head now lay on the ground. Not even a minute had passed. I watched this unbelievable scene in front of me as if it wasn't something that I had just done. The huge boss that needed an entire party to hunt had taken me less than a minute to take down. Aya! I let out an embarrassingly loud triumphant howl after accepting the scene in front of me and reveled in it once more. Around 20 minutes total had passed and the castle was completely cleared. A green crystal rose as a shining pile of loot appeared beside the boss. From then on, I kept on repeating Soliel's castle like a madman. 8 hours later, I had impossibly cleared the dungeon more than 24 times, my clearing averaging 3 times in 1 hour. At the end, I held in my storage rings a ton of rank C cores, 15 rank C skills, 1 rank B skill, and 5 new items. Chapter 22. I was in love with this rank C dungeon, only a single floor that held all the monsters in one place. Someone in my positions couldn't have asked for a better setting to quickly take everything down in record time and rake in an unimaginable amount of profit. I never thought a day would come where I would be able to collect this many rank C skills. And even lucky enough have a rank B skill drop along with a few items. Hunters had been clearing Soliel's dungeon twice a week, so over the span of the last few months they might have cleared it around the same time as I cleared it in one day. Just the thought of it made me amazed. My 2 storage rings had nearly filled up to the brim with the influx of cores, skills, and items. I was currently in the boss room of the dungeon where a broken Titan lay dead. While browsing through the rank C items first, there were 2 pairs of igneous armors, 1 igneous sword, fiery helm, and fiery boots, all of them exactly the same as the equipment that Anderson wore, but I wouldn't have to wait before equipping these ones. The ones I had obtained from him were still repairing from the heavy explosions done by explosive rune. I changed from swift boots to fiery boots and equipped one of the armors and helm. The armor had a similar characteristic of being unnaturally flexible even though it seemed like it was made up of extremely strong stone materials. The helm on my head also made me look like some sort of gladiator, so I took it off for now and only planned to equip it when I was faced with enemies. The items vastly improved my defense and acted as another layer of resistance besides the many skills already active. Next up were the abundant amount of skills. Something I never thought I would be holding is such large quantities. These would cost millions if I were to sell them, but money wasn't the main thing I was after. I looked through the skills trying to find which ones were actually effective for me to learn and narrowed it down to 8. The rest were skills that either required bows or another specific weapon to activate, or they were offensive skills with similar power to the ones I was currently using. I would learn as many supportive and defensive skills, but I would choose my main attacking skills with close scrutiny as those are the only ones I have to actively cast and use. If I held too many offensive skills and switched from to another when using, I would just have many skills in a similar level of power and not a few skills with high proficiency that have even more power. The 8 that I absorbed and learned were sharpen. Your attacks and skills deal more damage to your enemies. War cry. Motivate yourself and your allies. Increasing attributes by 5. Retaliation. Reflect back some of the damage from your enemies. King's rage. The rage of a king flows through you, granting a boost in damage. Military tactics. The qualities of a fortified soldier are activated, increasing all attributes by 10, unpredictable. Attack and casting speed increased by 10, elemental damage. Any attacks using the elements deal destructive damage, and stealth. Move undetected as all the energies you emit are absorbed, learning and activating. The skills gave me another sense of exhilaration. Military tactics that increased each of my attributes by 10, added the specified amount of vitality and strength, while focus remained as blank as usual. The rank B skill book that had been lucky enough to drop was stealth, which was such a great skill that it trumped everything else I gained today because of its high utility. Any colors or imposing airs released by the activated skills were all reined in, and I seemed like a normal human being, without an ounce of strength. I could also choose to blend into my surroundings to a similar effect like camouflage. Adding these 2 skills together would just be a killer combination. I would keep stealth active at all times and only activate camouflage or use the blending and effect of stealth when I really needed to. I didn't grasp the full strength of a full-fledged rank B hunter that held multiple rank B skills and items, but I felt like my strength was at the peak of B, if not higher. I would make no conclusions before meeting hunters that I can test against, though my next move was to absorb the multitude of cores filling up the 2 storage rings. there being more than enough to bring my attribute points to 200 after an hour of extensive absorbing, feeling the packed strength of my body that had been increasing way too fast. I took a second to reminisce how it was barely just a week since I awakened. My body felt like it could explode with tremendous power anytime I wished. Giving me even more confidence on the path I was walking on, I rose up and touched the green crystal to leave the dungeon. Looking back and seeing the dungeon monolith now having a color of light blue, Soliel's castle was now a low-risk dungeon that had no chance of a dungeon break occurring anytime soon. Hunters that were stationed a distance away in shops and stalls quickly noticed the change a few hours ago and began discussing amongst themselves as to which peak hunter had come across their city. I didn't want to completely break their common sense with them seeing me enter the dungeon every 20 minutes, so I took off camouflage, while still keeping stealth active and hiding the assortment of colors and armors around me from the skill effects every 2 hours for them to see a figure be transported out of the dungeon and diving back in right after I was already renowned and didn't need to hide. But that didn't mean I shouldn't hide this unexplainable level of strength I held for the time being. I did want to build a reputation for myself from now on for future plans, but I would only show them a surface of what I could do in the case another crazy hunter appeared in front of me. I had the confidence to completely take care of them if they were only expecting the level of strength I was showing. This was the last time I was leaving the dungeon today, so I didn't use camouflage. There were reporters and cameramen at a far distance carefully documenting the changes and pointing their cameras towards me. I tried not to react to any of it and took a ride from a nervous driver that was driving carefully at the speed limit while constantly looking back at me. I chuckled at this as we went towards the pristine residency lodging. I would visit the Awakened Center tomorrow morning to see if there was anything of value, but seeing as I was the person clearing the highest ranked dungeon currently and holding on to all the loot, I doubted there would be anything fruitful. My next phase of plans was to relax. It was only in the evening, but I wanted to stop thinking for a bit, eat a whole lot of food, and just sleep. I recalled the platters of shrimp and steaks that I had been eating the past few days and placed an order for 4 plates when I grabbed my room keys at Pristine Residency. Tonight would be a relaxing night. In Star City, a man was looking at the profile of a hunter they had just received more news of a few hours ago. He was Vice Admiral Magner, a decorated officer that stood at the front lines when monsters were running rampant and killing people left and right. He had risen to this rank because of his continuing hard work and planning while fighting for his country that he was trying to save once more. He just needed people to stop shoving their heads up their asses and listen. His work and stress had been piling up recently as he was recruiting talent to dive into the Rank B dungeon, Mangrove Swamp. They needed more production of cores, skills, and items more badly than most people thought. He thought back to the report that described the huge threat that was congregating in one location not far from the Empire and then focused once more on Hunter in front of him, Noah Osmond, active for around a week and already making waves. These were the types of people he needed. He quickly made a phone call to the contacts stationed in Outer Bank X and gave a message for them to deliver. Noah Osmond occupation, Hunter Vitality 20040 focus, strength 20060 skills, F Fireball 100 F heal 53 E Arctic armor 100D Flames of Torment 100D Safeguard 38D Danger Sense 100D Rough Skin 23D Fleeting 24C Arcanist's Sphere of Protection 100C Camouflage 83C Aura of Haste 72C Explosive Rune 81C Life Essence 73C Increased Penetration 58C Regeneration 21C Whirlwind 33C Smite 28C Gracefulness 21C Precision 21C Adamant 21C Sharpen 4C War Cry 4C Retaliation 4C King's Rage 4C Military Tactics 4C Unpredictable 4C Elemental Damage 4B Giant's Strength 27B Stealth 3 Equipment 2x Searing of Storage C Fiery Boots C Igneous Armor C Fiery Helm New Chapter 23. The night passed by spectacularly as I binged on food and familiarized myself with my fast-expanding array of skills. There were many and I was increasing them at a very fast rate that doesn't seem like it would reduce anytime soon. I went over every single one of the support skills to try and gain a better understanding of just how much they were increasing my damage output with my skills. I would get the chance to possibly observe this change more noticeably today after I use my offensive skills for the first time after adding 8 more new support skills in a day. I left the Pristine Residency while activating the full extent of stealth so that I could avoid any unwanted attention as I made my way towards the Awakened Center. I browsed over the skills once more and as expected, nothing of value was there. I held many rank C skills currently that would make a ton of money if sold, but I was planning on holding onto them for now until I began making my way over to some of the inner cities of the Empire where it was possible to buy rank B skills. The knowledge spread over on hunting platforms mentioned that their prices ranged upwards of 10 million because of their high demands and very little supply. They were my next goal, as I could only obtain a rank B skill book at a very low chance with the rank C dungeon I was currently clearing. Seeing nothing else catching my eye at the Awakened Center, I left for Soliel's castle right away. When I arrived at the huge monolith though, there was someone obviously out of place standing near it. It was a curvaceous woman in a tight business suit checking her watch as she waited for something. No hunters were tiered around Soliel's castle as normal rank C hunting squads didn't dare dive into the dungeon. So the only person she could be waiting for here was me. I removed my stealth and appeared a few feet away, startling her from my sudden appearance. A bright smile bloomed on her face as if she had found the huge treasure she was looking for. Hello, Mr. Osmont. My name is Amelia Ross and I'm here on behalf of Vice Admiral Magner of Star City. Her words started off very normal, but the end was explosive. I was immediately intrigued as Star City was one of the core defense cities in the Empire, with the government spreading its clutches in almost all industries and activities. Also, I had never come across any high titles such as Vice Admiral before. I replied back with a smile. What can I do for you? She nodded with a relieved expression and continued. I won't waste too much of your time, Sir Hunter, so I will give the message I was instructed to for you to read at your leisure. A thin folder with papers appeared on her hands and she handed it to me, finishing her last words as she left hurriedly. Oh, Mr. Osmont, many of the files in there are confidential, so we are counting on your discretion. I nodded at these words and watched her get in a black sedan that quickly pulled away. Confidential file, huh? What exactly do you contain? The first paper was an introduction from the one known as Vice Admiral Magner, and he kept things very much on point. He was hiring rank B hunters or higher to work with the government to raid the rank B dungeon, Mangrove Swamp. Half the loot would go towards the government as they provided you with money or anything else you wished for that they could provide. If you were patriotic enough and enlisted in the Empire's army, you would be in the first row of hunters who can select skills and items useful to them in their vast armory while also receiving the full benefits of the military. There were very few papers in the file, and the last one was the even more eye-catching one, with the entire paper only holding 2 sentences that made me very concerned. This is highly confidential information that only the top hunters have available currently. Please exercise great control. Enemies are heading towards the blessed empire that could cause the deaths of billions if we continue to be complacent. Only 2 sentences, but they made me attach a much greater importance to this file. An enemy coming to attack the empire? My mind's gears were turning as I wrapped my head around this new information and what I should do next. Who could it be? Was it beasts? Or was a war approaching? I was thinking for quite a while, but nothing came to mind. I had too little information currently and needed to learn much more. I made some quick calculations and change of plans and shot a text towards the people I had dived into Soliel's castle with 2 days ago. The original plan was to dive with them once more before I began looking at ways to make them stronger and then make my way towards the inner cities of the Empire, but that would have to be accelerated. When I finished that, I placed the file with very troubling information that also held a contact number I would be calling by the end of the day in one of my storage rings, and then went into the dungeon. I didn't forget to test the increased effectiveness of my offensive spells after the addition of Sharpen, War Cry, Retaliation, King's Rage, Military Tactics, Unpredictable, and Elemental Damage. The damage of all skills was boosted by quite a bit, with some of the qualities of the skills also improving. Flames of Torment now seemed like it was a coagulation of extremely long and thick heavy flames. The width of it becoming slightly larger, a single explosive rune was now effective to completely cover the huge head of the Titan and cause it to explode right away. As for Smite, the 10 golden blades of light became even larger, their handles even more distinct and edges even sharper. I continued my testing and experimentation of skills for the next 8 hours, clearing the dungeon more than 26 times and coming out around the time I texted the 5 people. It was already evening outside when I left the dungeon with my storage rings full. I was lucky enough to receive another rank B skill, meaning there around a 4 chance for it drop from the rank C Titan of this dungeon, as it was very similar to yesterday. More than 17 rank C skills came out this time around with 6 items. It was 2 pairs of igneous swords, igneous armor, and fiery boots. Of course there were also a ton of cores. After all the runs, the 5 that I texted were situated outside the monolith as I instructed, with Anderson's old party members reverentially looking towards me and Rachel standing there with the same confident expression. They're some of the top hunters of the city, so when they heard that I was clearing the dungeon alone on the news, they must have had an even better idea of what my level of power was than common hunters. I was already spent from running around the past 8 hours and wanted to make it quick. It doesn't seem like I'm going to be in Outer Bank X for much longer. I paused as I watched their expressions change to shock and concern before continuing. So I'll be making sure that there is still a team that is able to clear this dungeon when I leave. Relieved expressions returned, but they still seemed concerned. I didn't bother explaining and took out the pairs of igneous swords, igneous armor, lightning boots, and fiery boots along with 22 rank C skill. After putting aside 2 that I wanted to absorb later, I had received 2 igneous armors and 1 sword yesterday and then 2 more of each today, removing the one I was wearing myself. There were 4 once you added the one that was taken from Anderson. I lied and said that I found most of the skill books and items in Anderson's storage ring the 2 nights, and Rachel looked at me to make sure I wasn't joking before they went forward and grabbed an armor and sword each. The items weren't of much value to me, and I wanted to leave the city without any bad aftertaste, so I had to do this. This was just one of the consequences for taking down the previous rank B hunter of the city. I had Rachel take the fiery boots and Dan grab the lightning boots. Feeling bad for one of mages that wasn't getting anything as there were only 4 armors, but they wouldn't be on the front lines for now, I then laid out the skills for them to choose any that fit them. Everyone was able to gain something this time around. And 15 rank C skills remained after they picked and absorbed the skills in front of me. Once this was done, I took out the rank B skill that dropped today, Enlightened Fervor. Build up the strength inside you and release it with a swing of your weapon. I was thinking how I would set up a system where Soliel's castle could be cleared once I was gone, and the easiest answer would be to have a rank B hunter lead the team to clear it. One of the faster ways to do this was to have a hunter with stats nearing the peak of rank C and have them learn a rank B skill. I was struggling with myself this entire day while I was farming the dungeon on whether I would be able to let go of a rank B skill if it was something that fit well with my guidelines currently. Luckily or unluckily, it was a skill on the far spectrum of berserker skills that also required a weapon, so it made the decision much easier. I also understood that it would become even easier for me to gain rank B skills, whether that was by staying here and diving into Soliel's castle daily to get one a day, or move towards an area that had a rank B dungeon for me to gain them even faster. So today, I'll be making someone a rank B hunter and have them dive into the dungeon. Chapter 24. Of course, the person I was choosing to be the next rank B hunter in Outer Bank X was Rachel, the only person that ever showed a backbone among the hunters I met. She also unflinchingly questioned when she saw something wrong happening. And this was a type of naivety I could trust. She was shocked to receive the skill book and even more shocked when I told her that we'd be entering the dungeon as soon as they finished absorbing some rank C cores. I had so many of these piled up in the last 2 days that a few tens of millions could be made if I chose to sell them. And they should be more than enough to raise the attributes of these hunters to the peak of rank C. I took a few of the piles of cores out of my storage and had the hunters absorb them. They jumped at them after I gave the go-ahead and soon brought their attributes to 200. I watched the sun go lower and lower while waiting for them to finish. When they were done, I let them know that we would be diving into the dungeon right now. For me to just confirm Rachel's capabilities against the boss of the dungeon, they could easily take care of the statues appearing in the rooms of the castle with the equipment and new skills they just obtained. Only the boss remained a mystery. The entire group was soon transferred into the familiar landscape that I had appeared in multiple times today. I led the way into the castle and told them all to conserve their energy for the boss fight and let me do all the work on the preliminary monsters. After the 10th room, I could already tune out the sounds of amazement as these hunters watched me take down monsters that they would spend a few minutes on in a matter of seconds. I briefly stopped here for 20 minutes with the excuse of recovering my energy as I didn't want to surprise them too much. I kept using Smite all the way through because of its multiple enemy targeting attribute that took care of the increasing number of statues quickly. I wasn't worried about them seeing me cast the rank C skill repeatedly, as higher ranking hunters had enough reserves of energy to cast lower ranking skills multiple times, and at most they would attribute it to some sort of inherent skill that increases my focus. Before we opened the door into the hall where the boss lay, I wasted another 20 minutes with the excuse of recovering my energy just in case something went wrong, and then we entered the boss room. Rachel and the rest of them had been talking up strategies on the way here as they had nothing better to do and already had a plan that used Their new skills the best, the recently buffed-up knights went forward with their huge shield as they blocked the 10 guards that the 2 mages then sniped with colorful lightning. Rachel went forward and stood against the boss, activating enlightened fervor and releasing powerful blasts with every swing of her sword that kept the boss at bay. She was soon reinforced by the hunters that had taken down the guards, as the knights focused on blocking the boss while Rachel and the 2 mages continued to damage it. It very quickly roared and boulders began falling from the ceiling, and the mages were quickly covered by the knights while Rachel actually weaved through the falling stones and built up her power using enlightened fervor, releasing a strike that blasted the already damaged head of the Titan away. I was standing on the side watching everything, not even bothered when the boulders were falling, as the moment they got in contact with my skin they were repelled away because of the defensive skills that were always activated. I clapped my hands as the team was cheering amongst each other and gave the new rank B hunter a thumbs up. She rushed over and gave me a tight hug, thanking me for all my help and wishing me well for where I was going. I pushed the rest of them away when they continued giving their heartfelt thanks and felt a load lifted off my chest. The city I had been living in all this time would continue to be well even after I left it. I wasn't overly attached or anything like that. I just didn't want the place I had grown familiar with to be wiped off by a dungeon break that could have easily been taken care of. With that out of the way, I parted ways with the hunters and I texted the contact number that was included in the file that I would be ready to head out for Star City tomorrow morning. A reply quickly came, "That's great. We'll have a ride ready for you at 10 a.m. Thank you for your service." With this, I was at the end of my road for Outer Bank City. I was feeling nostalgic as I walked through the busy streets of downtown while watching the throngs of people move about. Some hunters were celebrating successful dungeon dives by getting drinks. Others were mourning the losses of their friends. Those that were unawakened had the same hopeful eyes as I did. Either they were too poor to buy a skill book to awaken, or they were working to save up enough money to do so. You also had the people that were waking up every day hoping to naturally awaken, and they would repeat this process for months. I reached the old dilapidated apartment complex that I was living in and grabbed anything else of value that remained in one of my storage rings. I bought another one because of their high utility, and now wore 3 rings on my right hand. I looked at the dilapidated apartment as my emotions rose, and I decided to sleep here for the first time in a while. I didn't have any worries about my life as I always had my defensive skills active, and I doubt anyone in the city would be reckless enough to try something like that. It was a split-second decision made from emotions, but I felt like it was a good one. I went into the kitchen, placed some water in a pot, and put it on high heat as I watched it boil. I then opened one of the creaking cabinets and pulled out a cup of ramen noodles. Mixing the two together, I soon had that familiar smell of food I haven't tried in quite a while wafting in my nose. I didn't wait for it to cool as I took a forkful in my mouth, not feeling the usual scalding pain when I ate it too quickly and only feeling a trace of warmth. I thought back to every event this past week and the extreme change that had occurred from it. I still didn't know why I could do the things I do, but I would solve the mystery in time. The world had become a foreign place the moment dungeons, monsters, and hunters began appearing. Nobody thought such a thing would be possible in the past. Neither did I think what happened to me to be remotely possible. Then we adapted and survived. I looked out of my apartment into the dark streets outside as I swore to myself that I would continue to grow and most definitely survive. Noah Osmont. Occupation: Hunter. Vitality 20040. Focus: Strength 20060. Skills: F. Fireball 100, F. Heal 53, E. Arctic Armor 100D. Flames of Torment 100D. Safeguard 38D. Danger Sense 100D. Rough Skin 44D. Fleeting 45C. Arcanist's Sphere of Protection 100C. Camouflage 91C. Aura of Haste 88C. Explosive Rune 95C. Life Essence 89C. Increased Penetration 85C. Regeneration 38C. Whirlwind 54C. Smite 68C. Gracefulness 42C. Precision 42C. Adamant 42C. Sharpen 19C. Warcry 19C. Retaliation 19C. King's Rage 19C. Military Tactics 19C. Unpredictable 19C. Elemental Damage 19B. Giants Strength 43B. Stealth 17. Equipment 3x. Searing of Storage C. Fiery Boots C. Igneous Armor C. Fiery Helm. End of Volume 1. Chapter 25. Morning of the next day, I was in the back of a black sedan watching cars rush by as we went down a long road. When we left the roads of Outer Bank City, we had to pass the only checkpoint for those leaving the city. The checkpoint was near the entrance to an old bridge that was the only road leading towards inner cities. To the left and right of the checkpoint was an expanding wall that circled around the entire city. It was mostly hunters or highly influential people that were able to move around in the empire. The two titles were actually interchangeable, as no influential person chose to not awaken. The driver pulled out sparkling military credentials to the hunter guards standing by, and we were soon driving away from the city. We went across the bridge when I looked back for the last time to see the city surrounded by a wall, not knowing if I would ever return. The scenery around us quickly changed to destroyed buildings and architectures as we saw guard posts every tens of miles. Down the road, I couldn't imagine the job of these people that stood in the barrens for days, only switching their shifts when someone else came to relieve them. The barrens were the empty and destroyed lands that nobody was living in. You would only find roaches or rats, or mutated animals that were hungry enough to attack anything there. The only people who took the post as guards along these long roads leading from cities were people that had nothing in life and were offered an olive branch from the government. They were contracted to work for them after they were given the resources to awaken and had to follow the contract for a specified time. I felt sad thinking of the people that had no option but to resort to these kinds of work. We drove through the barrens with no complication, passing other cities surrounded by walls throughout the day. The road got cleaner and cleaner as we went further inland, and we saw guard posts more frequently, eventually leaving behind the dystopian barrens and becoming exposed to a few green trees. The greenery kept on increasing as the hours passed, and we were soon nearing a huge walled-off city in the distance. This city had a slightly taller wall surrounding it with huge convoys of military trucks moving in and out. It was definitely much more bustling than the cities I've seen on the way here. We were able to get inside after the driver flashed his papers on the guard's face in an annoyed tone, as the process was much more thorough this time around. The inside of the city was filled with lights. It had taken the entire day to get here, and after the time it took for us to bypass the gates, night had already arrived. I was able to see the city come to life with countless lights shining into the night. We had arrived at Star City. The streets were so clean, with huge buildings pointing to the sky all around us. It was a stark contrast to the destroyed lands we had passed by this morning, as if we were in a completely different world. Masses of people that definitely had happier faces than those I have been used to move around busily. I watched the beauty of the city as if I was back to a time when no dungeons had appeared, as if I had traveled in time to the bustling metropolis I used to know. The scenery constantly changed as we moved further in. I had counted multiple blue monoliths so far, seeing a few rank F, E, and D dungeons based on their size. I was able to see blue monoliths similar in size to Soliel's castle after we passed another checkpoint to go further into the city, counting more than 5 as time passed. The large city continued on as we passed through roads with hunters dressed in military outfits patrolling, arriving at a huge compound that had a sizable monolith with a light orange hue shimmering around it. This monolith was almost twice as big as a rank C monolith, its pressure coming down on me and taking my breath away. I got out of the car and breathed in the air of the city, feeling it to be much fresher than what I've been used to. The driver led the way as we entered the huge compound that was teeming with movement. With a scan of his ID, the military compound had a variety of eye-catching buildings all around, with a ton of armored vehicles going in or out. We arrived at the tallest building and went inside. I found myself waiting for a few minutes while seated onto a very comfortable sofa before an imposing man came out. He had a long scar on his jawline, with his tanned face glistening in the bright room. A powerful voice broke out from his smiling face. "Mr. Osmont, I was very glad you could make it." The rough voice rang out clearly as I observed the man in front of me, noticing him to be very different from the people I've come in contact with. I smiled back and said, "It's only right I come for something as important as this." The discussion went well after this as the man introduced himself. He was Vice Admiral Magner, earning my goodwill, as the first thing he mentioned after his name was how he wanted to personally come to meet me as soon as I arrived. "Now, I know you must be tired from the trip, so formalities can wait until tomorrow. Commander Kyle will lead you to your resting area, where food and entertainment will be provided." The Vice Admiral finished his introduction and left as I began thinking about the words he had said. Entertainment? Commander Kyle led me away, and we walked to the living quarters while I thought about how I planned to live in this city. The first thing on my mind was finding out exactly what major threat was quickly approaching, and the second was my capabilities to solo that huge dungeon monolith near this compound. I'm already assuming that the first time I'll dive in it, it'll be accompanied by a team, which is a safe way to play it, as I currently have no idea about the increase in difficulty from rank C to B. After we finished the first dive, "I'll make my decision." Then we passed a few serious faces and I was given a smooth blue ID card that only had a golden letter B on it. Kyle mentioned that this card allowed access for a majority of the facilities in here, and also had access to the room in front of us. I thanked him for taking me around and he saluted and left. I scanned the key card and opened the door, expectant to see the living quarters of rank B hunters that the government provided. The room was slightly bigger than the large rooms in the pristine residency, boasting even more luxurious looks all around it. On the table were a wide array of foods and next to it was a huge bed, where a woman with a statuesque figure was flashing the brightest smile. Chapter 26. 26. The looming threat. So, last night was different to say the least, as I found myself getting some sleep later than usual. The food and everything else hit the spot, taking my mind off the many thoughts constantly clashing in my head. A hunter's stamina was nothing to laugh at. I went out of the room early in the morning to walk around the living quarters and observe the compound a bit more. Even though it was this early, there was already bustling activities with people and trucks moving about. I enjoyed the cool morning air and looked towards the huge monolith a distance away, itching to go towards it and give it a go. But I calmed myself down and walked back to the living quarters. Someone quickly called out my name. It was Commander Kyle, saying that the Vice Admiral was looking for me. I nodded at him to lead the way and found myself led into an office room that had an abundant amount of folders and papers lying around. I apologized for the mess. "Please have a seat." The imposing Vice Admiral has his usual air of confidence. As I sat down opposite him, I didn't waste any time as I asked the thing that was heavily weighing on my mind. Magner paused for a second before pulling out a red folder and laying out multiple photos across the table. "These are aerial pictures of the Barrens quite a distance away from the Empire. They were taken over a span of a few weeks. The pictures showed a terrifying sight of small dark dots that were uncountable, and large mass that could clearly be seen in the middle of it all. The large mass had a patterned obsidian shell that covered its entirety, only having a large head with pointed horns come out in the front. The pictures gave me a shock because these things were probably even bigger than they appeared on there. The rest of the pictures showed a similar scene, making me prompt the general to continue as I didn't grasp everything yet. These pictures were taken at a different location each time. They are moving." The Vice Admiral had a cold expression as he looked at the pictures and said this. My mind was moving to keep up as I took all of this in and asked him, "How long do we have?" Magner looked at me with a difficult expression before sighing. "That's the problem. We don't know. It could be in a few weeks or a month, but we cannot correctly track them because of their unpredictability. A few weeks? Possibly a month? Few." I let out a relieved sigh as I heard and laughed out loud, startling the man before me. I looked towards him and said, "If it is a few weeks, then we have more than enough time to prepare." I knew myself, and it was why I said this, barely a week after I awakened, and I was already standing in a position to hear information that many people had no idea about. If I was given another week or two, I was confident in getting much stronger than where I am right now. The question is, what strength will be enough to contend with the huge beast and the things it was bringing this way? I asked the Vice Admiral whether they were confident in pushing these monsters back, and his reply was less than favorable, adopting a dark expression that contained a trace of anger. He spent the next 2 minutes ranting about how they were not fully prepared, but the people at the top were still hesitant to institute measures to prepare for what was coming. The cities in the outer periphery of the Empire had to start the process of migrating soon, or the military needed to increase and institute its main defenses past those cities and prepare for the fight that was coming. Otherwise, a tremendous amount of people would be sacrificed for nothing. I listened to this as my mind went back to all the cities I passed when coming here, and one of the cities at the outermost of the Empire, Outer Bank X. My gaze turned cold when I looked back at the Vice Admiral. He saw my eyes and then said, "I've already rallied the relevant people though. Even though there is still some pushback, we have already begun the process of moving supplies and equipment to the front lines of defense in the outer perimeters," he continued when he saw my gaze calming down. "While this will be an ongoing process to fortify our defenses on the border, we also need hunters to lend their help in diving into dungeons and bringing out as many resources as possible: cores, items, skill books. They will all go towards the awakened soldiers that will be giving up their lives to fight on the front line." He finished with a sad expression as he mentioned the people that would be the first line of contact between us and monsters. I thought about all this and asked how they were doing things currently. We have 3 teams of 6 rank B hunters alternating like clockwork to clear the rank B dungeon, Mangrove Swamp. The 3 teams are able to clear the dungeon 3 times a day and have a rest period in between, with other similar teams acting the same manner in nearby cities, but we don't know if it'll be enough. He looked at me as he said the next words, "That's where people like you come in. I haven't met any rank B hunters that have been able to dive alone into a rank C dungeon repeatedly, so your power should be among the highest. I would love your cooperation to hasten this process with one of the teams we have clearing Mangrove Swamp." He said these words carefully while watching my face. I thought over everything and the amount of time we possibly had before nodding my head. "When is the next team diving?" A relieved expression appeared on his face as he told me the next team was going in within an hour. We then discussed how the resources were split up between the hunter teams diving in Mangrove Swamp. The military would pay handsomely for all the cores, items, and skills they received while providing for all their needs. If you became a hunter enlisted in the military, you would be given a rank with even more benefits. I thought about everything and decided to go with the plan of seeing the Mangrove Swamp while diving with a team. I would decide how to move forward from there. The talk with the Vice Admiral finished on a happy note, with him leading me to personally meet the rank B hunting squad I would be joining today. Half the group had already gotten together and I got the chance to meet the first genuine rank B hunters. Their mannerisms were a notch above other hunters and their bodies seemed packed with power that could explode at any moment. These were rank B hunters that could bring their attributes all the way to 250. When paired up with corresponding skills, it was a deadly force to behold. The first 3 that I met were 2 berserkers, one holding a broadsword that was just as tall as him and the other holding long blades on either side of him. The third one was a short woman that was about 4 feet 1 inch in height, and she was surprisingly the knight of the team. The power emanating from her in no way matched her stature, as a huge tower shield larger than her was strapped to her back. I got acquainted with the 3 while the rest of the team came in. They were all relatively polite with a mild interest in their eyes when we were talking, with the only one different being the short woman who went by the name Lana Stone. She was staring at me with eyes that blazed with fire as she showed much more interest than the others. The remaining team members were 2 mages, a man and a woman dressed in long purple robes with long staffs sparkling with ice elements. The last one was another knight, this one with a round golden shield covering half of his body and a flail on his other hand. More introductions followed, and the 6 usual rank B hunters that were about to dive into the Mangrove Swamp were joined by me. Morning everyone, here's today's chapter. Chapter 27. 27 Mangrove Swamp. I didn't like the Mangrove Swamp the instant we were transferred in. We appeared in the middle of muddy ground where I could feel my feet sink in a couple of inches. All around us were huge mangrove trees that shot to the sky. The smell was horrendous from the information the hunters gave me before we came. This land where we were transferred to was the innermost small patch of land surrounded by a muddy swamp. Our enemies would be coming all around us from the innermost ring of the swamp. The swamp was special as it had multiple rings. The first wave of enemies we would be facing would all be from the first ring, and the moment all those enemies were killed, a barrier between the innermost ring and the second wider ring would dissipate. The moment that barrier dissipated, all the monsters from the second ring would rush towards you. There were 5 rings in the entire swamp, with the 5th ring releasing the boss. This really was a killer dungeon. I didn't like the sticky and hard to move an environment, but my mind couldn't help but think of the possibilities of this dungeon with my abilities to prevent the complete wipeout of the hunting squads. The hunters designated one of the monsters they faced with the title of Princess. They could kill all other monsters besides this princess. She had to be protected at all cost, otherwise, the moment she dies, the second barrier will break and more enemies will rush in before they could catch their breath. I understood their entire system and soon began to feel the earth trembling beneath my feet. Humongous monsters were coming. The first one entering my eyes was a 4-meter large alligator, its huge jaws wide open as it lunged at our group. I instantly cast Flames of Torment and flung the thick pillar of flames forward as if it were a spear heading directly into the open jaws. SSSS. Sounds of meat being burnt rang out with a burnt smell right after as the inside of the alligator was destroyed by the rotating pillar of flames. I was thankful that this rank D skill had reached 100 proficiency and continued to be enhanced by support skills that allowed it to take down rank B monsters. Haha, good work newbie. The short tank, Lana Stone, was holding the tower shield twice her size, shouted as she and the rest of the group members moved to block and attack the other incoming alligators. I'll hold on to the princess. The other tank with the flail and golden shield said as his body glowed blue and withstood the charges of other alligators. The berserker with the broadsword held his sword now enveloped with flames and swiped at the neck of another one. making a clean cut as if there was no resistance from their scaly armor. The other berserker with 2 swords struck out and unleashed a huge cross-shaped sword light that went forward to butcher another set of alligators. The 2 mages weren't lagging behind. As they had already cast their spells, the area in front of them quickly became icy and froze all the incoming alligators, which is when the berserkers came in and shattered them with a swing of their swords. The mages then pulled back behind Lana before continuing to cast other spells. I liked their teamwork and began moving seriously myself. 10 golden swords appeared in the air and rushed down to each of the remaining alligators besides the princess, piercing their hard dry scales and nailing them to the ground. I did this repeatedly a few times, taking down tens of alligators before the hunting squad looked at me in surprise after witnessing the enhanced power of smite and shouted words of encouragement soon after as they went to reinforce the knight with the golden shield on holding off the princess. Newbie, I knew I felt something special from you. Don't hold back, Lana said as she went to help hold off the one remaining alligator, her small body powerfully moving the large tower shield as if it was weightless. The 2 knights rotated on holding off the princess until 10 minutes passed. When everybody had regained most of their energy, a sword bathed in flames ended its life. A sound was heard as if a bubble had popped. Before even more tremors could be heard as more alligators rushed, and the squad members always stayed in a tight-knit formation throughout, with the mages and I in the middle, the knights and berserkers on the outside. Even while being swarmed by tens of alligators, they held them off successfully. I was casting smite after about every minute thereafter, cleaning off a majority of the alligators without completely overpowering everything and making the short tank throw me even more fiery gazes. The chosen princess of this round was kept alive for 20 minutes before everyone was good to go once more. We repeated this process until the 3rd and 4th barrier was released. The thrill getting to me as I watched these powerful rank B hunters throw out skills in similar power to mine. The release of the 4th barrier was only done after a princess had been held down for half an hour, the hunter squad regaining their strength at their peak before all of their gazes focused on the male mage. They seemed to come to an understanding as they nodded their heads and told me to not go away from them under any circumstances while we began clearing this next wave. I nodded curiously as I waited to see what surprise they were going to pull off as I watched more than 100 huge alligators desperately clawing their way towards us. The mage held his staff forward as he was protected in a circle and aimed it toward the incoming monsters. 30 seconds passed with nothing happening, and then the heat began to rapidly rise all around us. I was shocked as I looked up and saw balls of thick magma raining from the sky and barreling down to the large groups of alligators making their way here. BOM. Sounds like bombs were constantly going off could be heard whenever the large balls of magma fell down and burned everything around it, turning any that were near into mincemeat. More than half of the alligators were wiped out with this one attack. My eyes shined as I looked at the heavily panting mage that had fallen to the ground. That type of skill, I wanted one. My heart was pounding as I replayed the scene of the raining magma balls from before. This skill, I really did want one badly. If I could grab a skill like this with my abilities, I was imagining how I could easily clear out large groups of monsters in seconds. I was daydreaming too much as someone had to scream to get my attention back to the monsters. Come on, newbie, don't lay there gaping and let's take care of the remaining beasts. The miniature tank was laughing crazily as she went forward to block the remaining wave that had reached us. I clicked my tongue while bringing back my focus and cast smite once more. I shaved off a majority of the remaining crocodiles by casting the 10 golden blades every 30 seconds, with the 2 berserkers butchering with their swords. Only a princess soon remained. The moment this remaining alligator was killed, an unimaginably large titan would be coming for us. I was curious to see how they usually handled this boss if their mage chose to cast such a powerful skill just before to avoid being surrounded by hundreds of alligators. Which hunter would come out with another surprise now? Hi everyone, extra chap surprise after this one because I was able to put in more time yesterday. Chapter 28. 28 Mangrove Swamp 2. I was expectantly waiting for another surprise from these genuine rank B hunters. One showed an extremely powerful skill that took out tens of rank B monsters in a blink. Although it seemed to be at the cost of her entire mana reserves, the knights continued to solidly defend even when they had tens of monsters surrounding them, never letting a single one pass through to their squad members. I wouldn't be waiting long to see the boss as half an hour quickly passed and the last princess was killed. I waited to hear the furious tremors of a huge titan rushing through the swamp, but instead just felt the entire swamp shake once, with everything going silent after. It then shook once more a few seconds after. These were just its steps. I was shocked while feeling the tremors that traveled through the murky waters. The Titan was slowly making its way towards us in unhurried steps. This was something that would instill fear into the hearts of hunters, but looking at these veterans that had dived into this dungeon multiple times before, they had determined expressions while waiting for the boss. The berserker holding the huge broadsword spoke to me. Continue casting your golden blades to disrupt its attention when the fight starts. If you can aim them at its eyes, it'll reduce its combat power even if it can still sense us. I nodded and prepared to face off against the huge beast on the horizon. It felt like a big mountain was gradually coming closer as the beast neared, its scales shining a dark green color, with its eyes shining a terrifying light. It looked at us a distance away as its humongous jaws opened and an unnatural sound came out. Oh! The sound was grating to the ears as the huge alligator's mouth now showed rows and rows of glistening sharp teeth. Its upper jaw was much wider than the lower one, causing its teeth to be completely hidden when its jaws were snapped shut. But now that it was open, the sight was horrible to behold. The man with the flaming sword continued with his directions spread out. Knights, keep it busy, and don't get eaten. The two knights nodded as this wasn't the first time, and they took their positions to the left and right of the alligator. The flames on the sword the berserker was holding began to dance wildly before they exploded and went to cover the entire body of the hunter. I was startled at this type of skill as the man in front of me had his body wreathed in flames. A howl escaped from him as he rushed forward to meet the Titan head-on. There was a blinding expanse of light as the berserker was flung back right away. Looking like a huge fireball, 10 golden blades had quickly appeared and half of them went towards each eye in a straight line. A pained sound rang out as the eyes of the humongous alligator were ruptured with pus leaking out. The berserker with dual blades took this chance to release 2 large sword lights that smacked onto the right side of the alligator, heavily injuring it. It didn't sit still as it turned to the side, and the next thing we knew, a scaly tail twice our size was shining in green light as it whizzed its way towards us. The two knights shouted as their bodies glowed and transparent shields of light appeared in front both of them when the tail struck. Boom. The land shook from the impact, but knights stood their ground and the strike was stopped, continuing with the momentum. A flaming berserker rushed in once more, spinning in the air as he constantly released fire blades that struck down on the head of the alligator. I cast Smite once again and had the 10 blades aimed towards its open jaws when it was howling in pain, rupturing the softer skin inside. The remaining mage that was silent all this time finally acted. Her glimmering staff pointed forward as an icicle the size of a car came down and pierced the already mangled head of the Titan, cutting short its screams as blood and brain matter splattered all around. My blood was boiling as I watched all of these fantastical skills and couldn't wait to start amassing higher-ranked skills of my own. I looked at the corpse of the disfigured Titan and promised myself to run this dungeon at least tens of times in the coming days to see what rank B skills would pop out. And of course, the rare chance of a rank A skill dropping. The hunting squad members were cheering at the finished raid as a green crystal appeared. Lana came towards me and said, "Not bad, newbie. Those blades of yours allowed us to finish our raid in record time. Our profits are about to increase." The rest of the members laughed as they gathered together and checked to see if anybody was injured. The mage that had cast the amazing-looking skill where magma balls fell from the sky was up on his feet again as they collected the loot and prepared to leave the dungeon. I looked around me at the multitude of alligator corpses, and the even larger one by the side. I knew I could clear this dungeon if I came in alone, but it would take me a lot of time to take down hundreds of alligators and this huge beast, and I loved clearing dungeons as quickly as possible. My highest ranking offensive skill was C, and I felt like I needed a high damage rank B skill similar to these hunters for an even smoother boss run. The face of a chiseled man popped in my head as I thought about what to do next after the cores and an item that dropped were collected. We placed our hands on the green crystal and were transferred to the outside world once more. Officers that were standing guard near the monolith were surprised and checked their watches when we came out. The dungeon was completed in under 3 hours this time around. Because of my addition, I took down the contact information of the rank B hunters as they invited me to go with them to celebrate. I thought about it as I recalled I hadn't really associated myself in any social settings for quite a while. Maybe this would be something good to do. The dungeon wasn't going anywhere, and a few hours of new places wouldn't hurt. I told them I'd catch up with them as I already planned to do something else at the moment and went towards the office of The Vice Admiral bypassing the many security points, I came back to the office filled with stacks of paper once again. Magner looked at an antique clock on the wall before smiling at me and saying everything went well, I presume? Very, and I would love to continue to help, but I'm going to need a favor from you first. The man's eyes perked up as he listened to my words this time around. I wanted to look through the offensive rank B skills in the hands of the military that I could learn to make my run of the dungeon even smoother, even if I was good enough to beat it now. Being even more prepared was not an issue. I could have jumped into the dungeon and spent some time clearing it for rank B skills, but the drops were random, so I would never know how long I'd be diving before a skill that I actually wanted to use drops. The lower ranking skills were also quickly losing their effectiveness, as the rank F fireball would not dent the scales of rank B monsters and wasn't used even once the entire dungeon dive, just a single rank B skill? I can make something like that happen. Let me call someone in. I nodded at him and waited by the side. A minute later, a woman dressed in business wear came into the room and greeted the Vice Admiral. Boss, here's the document you wanted. Magner nodded at her as he grabbed the thick book and handed it to me. This is the inventory of all rank B skills that haven't been distributed yet. Let us know which one fits your taste and we'll take it out of storage for you. Magner looked at the hunter in front of him that was intently looking through the inventory of skill books and smiled at the achievement of recruiting another excellent hunter. Seeing how he almost had the dungeon run, his help would continue to bring in even more resources in the weeks to come. He just hoped this hunter's addition, along with everything else they were trying to do, would bolster their strength enough to stand against what was coming. What they really needed were more of the peak rank A hunters, but they couldn't be cultivated as quickly. He was also looking favorably at the hunter in front of him as another candidate, as his power had skyrocketed just in the past week. Maybe there were still more surprises from him. Thank you guys once again for your continued support. Chapter 29. The Colosseum. The book held a list of many more skills than I expected, making me spend some time deciding my first rank B offensive skill. A disastrous skill caught my eye with its high damage potential and the fact that it would match extremely well with the mangrove swamp's huge clusters of alligators that would swarm towards me. Once I went in alone, I let the Vice Admiral know of my selection and spent a few minutes talking while the assistant went out, coming back 10 minutes later with a suitcase that held a thick book. I received the suitcase and absorbed the skill miniature tornado. For 10 seconds, unleash a rotating column of sharp winds that follow your commands. The skill appeared in my panel without an issue, and I was looking forward to spamming as much of it as I could when hundreds of alligators swarmed me from all sides. I gave my thanks to the Vice Admiral and stepped out of the office. The short tank, Lana Stone, had already sent an address on my phone of where I should be joining them. I'll indulge myself in this bit of socializing before going back to my lone ways of decimating dungeons. I got out of the military sector and got a ride towards the location. The streets of Star City were packed with energy and people, making you rethink whether half the land had really been turned into a desolate wasteland and people were still fighting for their lives. This being one of the core defense cities of the Empire, there were very few incidents of monsters causing deaths and destruction once things stabilized. The unawakened people thus looked up to the hunters that were diving into dungeons to protect them every day and aspired to be like them. The car neared a grand structure that could be seen from anywhere in the city. It took my breath away as I remembered seeing videos of structures like these that were in multiple inner cities across the Empire. The excited faces of people rushing in through the huge double doors and the shouts and screams could already be heard from here. This was the place where hunters fought and competed for fun. This was the Colosseum. I shot a text to Lana that I was here, and someone approached me a few minutes after to lead me past the lines of people. Booming sounds of boos and cheers were already resounding throughout the huge building as we went in and neared spaces with fewer people. The Colosseum was built similar to those in ancient cultures, a huge oval amphitheater with thousands of seats. The hunting squad had a huge space all to themselves close to the arena floor in the middle where there were already hunters fighting. I joined them and watched the ongoing match, which seemed to be between two rank C hunters. The fights were brutal, as the bloodier they were the more cheers the crowd gave. Drinks and food were already brought in and we began talking when the short tank turned to me and screamed in my ears over the loud cheering, "We might be lucky enough to see an amazing show in a few minutes. Apparently Lightning Hand is bored enough once again and is announcing a competition soon." I listened to her words as I recalled who Lightning Hand was. This was one of the few known rank A hunters of the Empire. I didn't realize he was in Star City. What was someone strong like him about to do? The fight between the two rank C hunters was gradually coming to a close as the mage ran out of mana and was now being beaten to a pulp by the berserker. The crowd was screaming like they were possessed as a ringing sound was heard and the fight was finished. The cheers reached an even higher pitch when the match was done and a burly man with his body crackling with lightning appeared on the 4 huge screens in the middle of the Coliseum. He was standing in a section close to us surrounded by pretty women when he grabbed a mic and his booming voice could be heard throughout. "Hello, citizens of Star City." The strong voice rang out like a clap of lightning and the cheers from the spectators reached a fevered pitch. "We're in for a great show today, as I will be putting forth a prize that no hunter can say no to." Lightning Hand rose his hand in the air as a thick book appeared between his fingers. "This, my dear citizens, is the Rank A skill book, Flight." The crowd went silent for a second before even louder cheers resounded. My mind received a shock as I looked up at the man on the screen and the glistening skill book he was holding. The hunting squad members got up from their seats as serious expressions rose on their faces. The man whose body had tendrils of lightning dancing on it continued. "For today only, in the next 30 minutes, the winner of a free-for-all fight will get to take this bad boy home." The loud screams continued to increase as hunters from all over the stadiums rose up with greedy faces. This was a Rank A skill, something that rarely dropped in Rank B dungeons and only ever came out from the dungeons that very few hunters could delve in. This was the dream of many hunters. Even I was expectant to get my hands on something like this. Flight, something that literally allowed you to, well, fly. Now, for all the hunters that want to participate, jump into the ring. The moment his words finished, multiple hunters began jumping from their seats onto the huge circular arena at the center of the Coliseum. Hunters were greedy for skills but were smart enough not to lose their lives. Most of the ones that jumped in were Rank C hunters and a few Rank Bs. The members of the hunting squad looked at each other before the short tank said, "Ha ha, let's put our restrictions aside and see which person is lucky enough to get this pie falling from the sky." The rest of them nodded at this and also jumped down to join the hunters on the ground. I looked at the outpouring of hunters that were filling the arena and rose up myself. It was already half filled with dense numbers of hunters that were putting their lives on the line. I looked at this and jumped down myself with a sigh. I really couldn't sit out on something like this. Rank A skills were so rare that getting another skill like this would be near impossible unless you farmed the high-ranking dungeon tens or hundreds of times. Even now I was questioning why this Rank A hunter was giving it away on a whim. He continued talking as the hunters continued to fill into the arena. "The rules for the free-for-all are simple. The last man standing wins." The crowd had gone crazy as the build-up to the fight continued, with people standing up hysterically shouting as if they were the ones getting the prize. A few minutes passed by with no other hunters jumping into the ring. Lightning Hand looked around the densely packed arena and raised his arm. Quietness ensued in the huge Coliseum before he brought it down and shouted, "Start." Chapter 30. The arena was filled with screams as soon as the fight started, with explosions of skills bouncing from all around. The Rank C hunters were taking each other out without a question, their eyes filled with greed. The lower-ranked hunters here were those whose greed had surpassed their common sense. As the sane ones stayed on their seats to keep on watching the moment, they realized the people competing for this would mostly be Rank B. I watched the scene of chaos unfolding in front of me as I smiled and activated both stealth and camouflage. I disappeared from the sights of all the hunters and watched the scene while fully protected with multiple defensive skills that brushed off any spell that accidentally came my way. The audience was screaming in a frenzy as they watched the bloody fight below, calling for more blood anytime someone fell. Rank B hunters gradually began to move in full force, devastating skills beginning to fly out. The squad I had dived into mangrove swamp with were all far apart fighting their own battles, but one of the mages was already knocked out cold. At the center of attention was a hunter holding 2 round shields with his body bathed in golden light. This knight pushed back all attacks and hunters that neared him with explosive blasts of white light. The moment they neared, multiple hunters were falling just from him alone. Opposite on the other side was a woman holding a bow that was shooting flaming arrows and heavily wounding the hunters that were struck. I watched all of this while evading any hunters rushing about and absorbing the stray attacks without the notice from any hunters. The bloody fight continued until most of the Rank C hunters were knocked out, leaving 9 Rank B hunters on the floor of the arena intently staring at each other. One of them couldn't hold on any longer and let out a battle cry while rushing to another hunter nearest to him. Another brawl ensued, with the hunter holding the 2 round shields continuing to push away any skills and attack with explosive blasts of white light from the hunting squad. I knew only the berserker with the flaming sword continued, his entire body wreathed in flames once more as he took on 2 other hunters by himself. The rest of the team members were knocked out cold or sitting Out injured, I found a relatively far place in the arena away from the fight that had a ton of rank C hunters either knocked out or struggling painfully, and sat down while continuing to observe the fight. My aim was to do very little work and defeat the last hunter standing that should be exhausted to obtain this rank as skill easily. The hard fight continued as it came down to two hunters facing off in the arena. The hunter bathed in a golden light that was holding two shields, and the hunter with a bow that shot scalding hot flames. Their standoff was building up the anticipation among the audience. As the cheers continued, I was looking forward to doing very little work and win when I felt the air change. Instead of heading towards each other, two hunters turned towards my location at the same time. Well shit, I stood up and got ready for the fight early, as it seemed the hunters saw through my stealth and camouflage. Did they have a skill that helped in detection or something else? Oh well, it doesn't matter anyway. A bright smile bloomed on my face as I watched the woman draw her bow and shoot multiple flaming arrows towards me, and the shining knight rushed forward. I would at least get a chance to test the destructive force of the newly gained skill against two rank B hunters that seemed to be standing at the peak of this rank. Miniature tornado was cast for the first time. A swirling mass of sharp winds appeared in front of me that dispersed the flame arrows that were rushing towards me and pushed back the glowing knight. I felt the winds move my dark hair around as I commanded the skill to go towards the nearest hunter. The body of the glowing knight expanded? Wow, his body actually expanded as the blinding light shooting out of him increased, withstanding the heavy and sharp winds until the skill faded a few seconds after. As it had a 10-second duration, his body came back to normal size while he was roughly breathing, seeming proud of being able to withstand the attack. I gave a light laugh as I shook my head and cast another miniature tornado. The knight's face turned ashen as he saw another coming right at him and used the two shields to try and withstand the rotating winds to no avail, being blown away with cuts all over his body. A second after, the remaining hunter on the field that was shooting arrows had moved a further distance away from me while continuing to shoot. I wouldn't let her have her way as I used whirlwind to close the distance and cast another miniature tornado at her position. The rapidly rotating winds swiped the hunter off her feet, inflicting heavy damage on the armor and skin beneath it, the force ultimately blasting her onto the walls of the arena. Silence followed after as I stood in a field of hunters that were either knocked out or crying painfully, with a few missing some limbs. WAA! The crowd's cries reached another decibel higher as they saw the end of the fight, and the booming voice of the rank A hunter could be heard. "Ha-ha! Good! Good! Good!" The man repeated the same words 3 times before he leaped up from the area he was in and fell down towards the arena like a strike of lightning. He looked me up and down and laughed once more before pulling out a glistening book from his storage ring. Calm yet careful, smart, and also powerful. Haha. This skill book isn't wasted on you. It was supposed to go to the rank B hunter with the highest achievements in the city, but I'm impulsive and I believe in opportunity and luck. This is your fortune. The skill book was carried by a thin layer of sparkling electricity and drifted towards me. I was marveling at the skills of a rank A hunter while looking at this monster of a man in front of me. His body seemed like a volcano ready to erupt and smash anything standing on its way. I knew I wasn't ready to face someone like this yet. My attributes had only just broke through to rank B because of some support skills, and I needed to put in a lot more work if I wanted to catch up to people at this stage before everything crumbled. Thank you for the opportunity. I grabbed the skill book, absorbing it right then and there without wasting a single second as I thanked the man surrounded by lightning. Use it wisely and try to reach for higher places. He nodded as his body lifted off the ground effortlessly, leaving behind a few words before shooting up to skies and being gone in a flash of light. I could barely follow the speed of that lightning as it went away, making me even more excited to go back to my lone ways of dungeon diving and quickly gain that level of strength.